She was just a single mom trying to survive at a wedding where no one noticed her. Then the Mafia boss in the room walked in, said her name in front of everyone, and her invisible life shattered. What she didn't know, 5 years ago, she'd saved his life without realizing who he was. And now he'd do anything to protect hers. Olivia Reed knew she didn't belong here the moment she stepped through the mansion's gold-trimmed doors. The Wexford estate sprawled across 10 acres of Connecticut countryside, with marble fountains and gardens that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. Inside, crystal chandeliers hung from cathedral ceilings, and women in designer gowns glided across polished floors like they were born doing it. Olivia smoothed down her navy dress, bought on clearance at Target 3 years ago, and tightened her grip on 7-year-old Danny's hand. "Mom, why is everyone staring?" Danny whispered, his dinosaur tie already crooked. "They're not, sweetheart. They're just looking at the decorations." But they were staring. Olivia felt every glance like a pinprick. The invitation had come because Danny was friends with a flower girl, Emma, from his public school. Emma's grandmother had insisted on including them, but clearly, the rest of the Wexford family hadn't gotten that memo. "Is that her?" A woman's voice drifted from near the champagne tower. "The one who works at the diner?" "I heard she's a waitress at that truck stop off Route 7, another replied. "Can you imagine?" Richard must be mortified. Olivia's cheeks burned. She wasn't a waitress. She was a night shift manager at a medical supply warehouse. Not glamorous, but honest work that kept food on the table and Danny in decent shoes. But correcting them would mean acknowledging she'd heard, and she refused to give them that satisfaction. "Come on, Danny. Let's find our table." They wove through clusters of guests who parted like she carried something contagious. The seating chart directed them to table 18, tucked in the far corner near the kitchen doors, half hidden behind a decorative pillar. The pity table, Olivia thought, where you stuck people you had to invite but hoped nobody would notice. She pulled out Danny's chair and helped him settle in, trying to ignore the way conversation at nearby tables died when they approached, then resumed in urgent whispers once they passed. "Mom, I'm hungry," Danny said, eyeing the untouched appetizers on the neighboring table. "The food will come soon, baby." Here, she dug through her purse and found a granola bar, slightly crushed but still wrapped. Danny took it gratefully. Across the room, she caught sight of the bride, Alexandra Wexford, radiant in a gown that probably cost more than Olivia made in 6 months. She was laughing with bridesmaids who looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Olivia felt a pang, not jealousy exactly, but a deep, aching awareness of how different their worlds were. She'd been beautiful once too. Before Danny's father left when she found out she was pregnant. Before the mounting bills and double shifts. Before life taught her that fairy tales were for people who could afford them. "Excuse me," a server appeared, young and apologetic. "I'm sorry, but these seats are reserved for." "We're at table 18, Olivia said firmly, showing him the invitation. The server glanced at it, then at her dress, clearly doing math that didn't add up.
"Right.
Of course. My mistake." But the damage was done. The tables around them had heard. The whispers intensified. Olivia pulled out her phone, pretending to check messages so she'd have somewhere to look besides the judgmental faces. Danny kicked his feet under the table, oblivious, playing a game on the small tablet she'd saved for months to buy him. Then the room changed. It was subtle at first, a shift in energy, like air pressure dropping before a storm. Conversations faltered. Heads turned toward the entrance. Through the tall windows flanking the main doors, Olivia saw them. 3 black Mercedes SUVs rolling up the circular driveway in perfect formation. Not the hired luxury cars that had been depositing guests all afternoon. These were different, darker, more purposeful. The vehicle stopped, and men in dark suits emerged, not chauffeurs, something else entirely. They moved with military precision, scanning the surroundings before one opened the rear door of the center SUV. A man stepped out. Even from this distance, Olivia could see he commanded attention. Tall, maybe early 40s, with dark hair swept back and a tailored suit that fit like it had been constructed on his body. He didn't hurry. Didn't need to. The world would wait. "Who's that?" someone hissed near the bar. The name rippled through the crowd like a curse. Dante Caruso. Olivia didn't recognize it, but everyone else clearly did. The color drained from Richard Wexford's face. His wife grabbed his arm, her knuckles white. Even the bride stopped mid-laugh, her smile freezing into something brittle. The main doors opened, and Dante Caruso walked in. The room fell silent. Not the polite quiet of a ceremony, but the suffocating silence of fear. Guests stood instinctively, like subjects before a king they hadn't elected, but didn't dare disrespect. Olivia stood too, not sure why, just following the crowd's lead. She pulled Danny close. Dante's eyes swept the room slowly, methodically. His expression was unreadable, not angry, not pleased, just present. Powerfully, undeniably present. Then his gaze stopped. On her. Olivia's breath caught. She'd never seen this man before in her life. She was certain of it. So why was he staring at her like he'd found what he'd been searching for? Dante took a step forward, his men flanking him. Another step. The crowd parted without being asked. He crossed the ballroom floor with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life, his eyes never leaving Olivia's face. Her heart hammered. Danny pressed against her leg, sensing something wrong. When Dante was 10 feet away, he stopped. Olivia Reed. Her name fell from his lips like a secret, spoken with a reverence that made no sense. The room collectively gasped. How did this man, this dangerous, powerful stranger, know her name? Olivia's voice shook. I think you have me confused with someone else. A slight smile touched Dante's face.
No confusión.
I've been looking for you for 5 years. The whispers exploded around them. 5 years? Looking for her? The woman from table 18? The one in the target dress. Richard Wexford stepped forward, his voice strained. Mr. Caruso, I'm sure there's been some. Dante raised one hand, barely a gesture, just a slight lift of his fingers. Richard stopped mid-sentence, like he'd been struck mute. Dante's attention remained fixed on Olivia. We need to talk. Privately. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to grab Danny and run. But there was something in Dante's eyes, not threat, but recognition. Like he knew her. Really knew her. And underneath her fear, buried deep, was the strangest feeling. She knew him too. Mom. Danny's voice was small, scared. Olivia knelt down, keeping her eyes on Dante. It's okay, baby. I just need to talk to this man for a minute. She stood, squaring her shoulders. 5 minutes. Outside. My son stays with the bride's grandmother. I can see her from the terrace. Dante nodded once.
Agreed.
As Olivia followed him toward the French doors leading to the garden, she felt every eye in the room burning into her back. The whispers were deafening now, speculation running wild. But all she could think was, how does he know my name? And why did his voice sound familiar, like an echo from a dream she'd forgotten? The garden terrace was quieter, but Olivia could still feel hundreds of eyes watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She positioned herself where she could see Danny inside, safely sitting with Emma's grandmother, who was feeding him cake and seemingly oblivious to the chaos. Dante stood with his back to the hedge maze, his men positioned at each entrance to the terrace. Not threatening, just present. Watching. You're scared, Dante said. It wasn't a question. A stranger knows my full name and says he's been hunting for me for 5 years. What do you think? Not hunting. Searching, he paused, studying her face in the fading sunlight. Highway 9. Outside Millbrook. March 14th, 5 years ago. Around 2:30 in the morning. Olivia's breath hitched. That date. That night. Her mind raced back. She'd been driving home from a double shift at the warehouse, exhausted, barely keeping her eyes open. Danny had been too, sleeping at her mother's house. She'd stopped for gas at that lonely station, the only one for miles on that dark stretch of highway. There was a man, Dante continued, his voice low, bleeding in the parking lot. Gunshot wound to the side. Everyone inside the station saw him. The clerk, 2 truckers, a couple in an RV. Everyone saw, and everyone pretended they didn't. Olivia remembered. God, she remembered. The man had been slumped against a pickup truck, his shirt soaked with blood. She'd frozen at first, her nursing student training from years ago screaming at her to help, her survival instinct screaming at her to drive away. You pulled over, Dante said. You got out of your car, that old Honda with the broken taillight, and you knelt beside me. Her hands trembled. That was you. You used your jacket to apply pressure. You had this calm voice, like you'd done it 1,000 times. You told me to stay awake, to focus on your face. You asked me my name, but I couldn't speak. Too much blood loss. Olivia's memory sharpened. She'd grabbed napkins from her car, a water bottle, anything to help. The man's eyes had been dark, intense, fighting to stay conscious. She'd worked fast, her old EMT training coming back despite the years. You used the payphone, Dante continued. Not your cell. You called 911, gave them the location but no name. Then you left before the ambulance arrived. I had to get home to my son, Olivia whispered.
And I
couldn't afford to be involved in something that looked like a crime. Single mom, barely scraping by, cops asking questions I couldn't answer about a shooting victim? That could have destroyed everything. You saved my life and asked for nothing. Didn't even stay long enough for a thank you. I didn't do it for a thank you. I did it because she stopped, searching for the right words. Because leaving someone to die in a parking lot isn't something I could live with, even if helping them was risky. Dante stepped closer. Do you know who I am?
truly.
I heard the name. Caruso. I'm guessing you're not in the wedding planning business. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. I run the largest organized crime network in the Northeast. Shipping, gambling, protection, imports that don't go through customs. When people need something done that can't be done legally, they come to me. Olivia's stomach dropped. So that night, I was meeting a business associate who decided to renegotiate our terms with bullets instead of words. He's no longer in business. She should run, grab Danny, and disappear. But something kept her rooted to the spot. Why did you look for me? She asked. Because I owe you a debt. In my world, debts are sacred. You gave me my life back. I've spent 5 years trying to find you, so I could repay that. But you were careful. Paid cash for gas. No credit card trail. No security footage from that angle. You were a ghost. I didn't want to be found. I know. That's what made you remarkable. Dante's expression softened. Most people who help me want something: money, power, protection, favors. You wanted nothing. You just helped. Like it was the simplest thing in the world. It should be, Olivia said quietly. It's not. Not in my world, he paused. I finally found you 3 weeks ago. Property records, your son's school enrollment, a DMV photo that matched a witness description. I came here today because I knew you'd be at this wedding. How did you know that? Emma Wexford's grandmother is my late wife's aunt. Distant relation, but still family. When I heard you'd be here, I saw my opportunity. Olivia's head spun. You could have just knocked on my door.
Called me.
This whole dramatic entrance was necessary. Because the moment I found you, other people started noticing the resources I was dedicating to the search. Questions were asked. And in my business, people look for leverage anywhere they can find it. Fear iced through her veins. What does that mean? It means that by publicly acknowledging you in front of these people, many of whom have connections to my competitors, I've made a mistake. I've shown them that you matter to me, that you're important. I'm not important.
I'm nobody.
You are nobody, Dante corrected gently. Now you're the woman Dante Caruso owes a debt to. In my world, that makes you very valuable. To me as an asset. To my enemies as a target. Olivia felt the ground shift beneath her feet. You're saying, because you said my name in there, You're in danger. Your son is in danger. And it's my fault. She wanted to scream,
To cry.
to rewind the last 20 minutes and stay home. So what do? You let me protect you. Until I can eliminate the threat. No, the word came out stronger than she felt. I'm not getting involved in your world. I have a son, a life. Which will end if my enemies get to you first. Then unsay my name. Tell them it was a mistake. It doesn't work that way. The damage is done. Through the windows, Olivia saw Danny laughing at something the grandmother said. So innocent. So unaware that his mother's one good deed 5 years ago had just put a target on both their backs. How long, she asked, her voice breaking. How long until it's safe? I don't know.
Days.
Maybe weeks. But I will fix this. I promise you. I don't want promises from a criminal. Dante's jaw tightened. 5 years ago, you didn't care what I was. You just saw someone who needed help. 5 years ago, I didn't have a choice. Now I do. No, Dante said softly. You really don't. The moment I walked through those doors, your choice was taken away.
I'm sorry.
Olivia looked back at her son, tears burning her eyes. One act of kindness. One night, she'd chosen compassion over caution. And now everything was falling apart. 2 hours later, Olivia decided they needed to leave. The reception had continued, but the atmosphere had changed. People stared at her openly now, whispering behind hands, pulling out phones to take photos when they thought she wasn't looking. She'd become a curiosity, the mystery woman connected to Dante Caruso. Dante had returned inside briefly, exchanged quiet words with Richard Wexford that left the man pale and sweating, then disappeared with his men. But Olivia felt his presence everywhere, like a shadow she couldn't shake. Danny was getting tired, cranky from too much sugar and excitement. She needed to get him home, back to their small apartment where things made sense. Come on, baby, she said, gathering her purse. Let's go home. They slipped out through a side entrance, avoiding the main doors where guests were still arriving and departing. The parking lot was massive, cars scattered across the estate's grounds. She'd parked far from the mansion. The spaces near the entrance had been filled when they arrived. The sun had set, and the lot was dimly lit by ornamental lampposts that did more for ambience than actual visibility. Olivia held Danny's hand tight, her heels clicking on the pavement as they navigated between Mercedes and BMWs toward her old Honda.
Mom, I'm tired, then you wind.
I know, sweetheart. We'll be home soon. You can sleep in the car. She was digging in her purse for keys when she heard footsteps behind her.
Fast.
Too fast. Olivia spun around just as 2 men emerged from between parked cars. They wore dark clothes, faces covered with black ski masks.
Wrong.
Everything about this was wrong. Danny, run, she screamed, pushing her son behind her. But there was nowhere to run. Another masked man appeared from the other direction, cutting off their escape. 3 of them, surrounding them. Just come quietly, one said, his voice muffled. Nobody gets hurt. Stay away from us. Olivia fumbled for her phone, but one of them lunged forward and grabbed her wrist, twisting it until she cried out and dropped the phone. It skittered under a car. Danny screamed. The sound pierced Olivia's heart like a knife. Mom. One of the men reached for Danny, and something primal exploded in Olivia. She threw herself at him, clawing at his face, kicking, biting, anything to keep him away from her son. She felt his masked tear, saw a flash of pale skin, and a jagged scar across his cheek. He backhanded her. The world spun. She hit the pavement hard, tasting blood. Grab the kid, one of them barked. Through blurred vision, Olivia saw hands reaching for Danny, saw her son's terrified face. Then everything changed. A black SUV came out of nowhere, tires squealing as it cut across the parking lot. It skidded to a stop between them and the attackers. Doors flew open and men in dark suits emerged, Dante's men, moving with lethal precision. The first attacker didn't even see it coming. One of Dante's guards dropped him with a single punch that sounded like breaking wood. The second tried to run but was tackled to the ground. The third, the one who'd hit Olivia, pulled out a knife. "Back off," he yelled, grabbing Danny and pressing the blade to the boy's throat. Olivia's world stopped.
Please.
"Please don't hurt him." Dante appeared from behind the SUV, his face a mask of cold fury. "Let the boy go." "Not a chance. We're walking out of here, and you're gonna let us, or I—" He didn't finish the sentence. One of Dante's men, a giant of a man with hands like sledgehammers, moved so fast it was almost invisible. He twisted the knife away, broke the attacker's wrist with an audible crack, and had him face down on the pavement before Danny could even process what happened. Danny stumbled forward, sobbing, and Olivia caught him, pulling him into her arms despite the pain screaming through her body. She held him so tight, she thought she might break him, but she couldn't let go. "You're okay, baby. You're okay. I've got you." Dante knelt beside them, his voice gentler than she'd ever heard it. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Olivia managed, though her lip was split and her wrist was already swelling. "You're not fine," Dante gestured to one of his men. "Get a medic."
Now.
The three attackers were being zip-tied and searched. One of Dante's guards approached, holding a phone he'd pulled from one of the men's pockets.
"Boss.
Last call was 15 minutes ago. To a Connecticut number." Dante's expression darkened. "Trace it. I want to know who they called and who they're working for." He turned back to Olivia. "This happened too fast. Someone at that wedding called them the moment I said your name. They were already in position waiting."
Who?
Olivia's voice shook. "Who would do this?" "Someone who knew you'd be vulnerable. Someone with connections to people who want leverage against me." Dante stood, scanning the parking lot. "This estate belongs to Richard Wexford. He has security cameras everywhere, except conveniently, this section of the parking lot has been under maintenance for the past week." The implications crashed over Olivia like a wave. "The bride's father? He set this up?" "Not directly. But he's involved." Dante's voice was ice. "He made a call. Probably to cover a debt of his own, or to curry favor with my competitors. Either way, he gave them you." One of the guards approached with a first aid kit and began cleaning the cut on Olivia's lip. Danny clung to her, his face buried in her shoulder, his little body still trembling. "I can't go home," Olivia said, the reality sinking in. "They know where I live, where Danny goes to school. Everything." "No," Dante agreed. "You can't. So what do I do? Where do I go?" Dante pulled out his phone and made a quick call.
Marco.
"Prepare the safe house on Riverside. 2 guests, indefinite stay. Full security detail." "Wait," Olivia started. "You have 2 choices," Dante said, his voice firm but not unkind. "You can try to disappear on your own, take your son, and run. Change your names, leave the state, hope they never find you. But they will find you. These people are professionals. What's the other choice? You trust me. Let me protect you until I can eliminate the threat. Clean accommodations, armed security, everything you need. You and Danny will be safe." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." Olivia looked down at Danny's tear-stained face, at his small hands gripping her dress, like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world. She thought about running, about trying to do this alone. But she'd seen what these men were willing to do. She'd felt the knife at her son's throat. She had no choice. She'd never had a choice. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Dante nodded once. "Get them to the safe house. Nobody follows you. If anyone tries, you know what to do." As Dante's men guided them toward the SUV, Olivia looked back at the wedding venue. Through the windows, she could see the reception still going, people dancing and laughing, oblivious to what had just happened in their parking lot. Her old life, the one where she was invisible, ignored, but safe, was gone. And there was no going back. The safe house wasn't what Olivia expected. She'd imagined something sterile and prison-like, concrete walls, bare floors, men with guns standing in every corner. Instead, the black SUV pulled up to a renovated brownstone in a quiet neighborhood near the river. It looked like any other upscale family home, with potted plants on the front steps and warm light glowing through curtained windows. "This is it?" she asked as Marco, Dante's head of security, opened her door. "Mr. Caruso believes comfort and security aren't mutually exclusive," Marco said. He was in his 50s, built like a brick wall, with kind eyes that didn't match his intimidating frame. "You'll be safe here, Mrs. Reed. It's just Olivia. I'm not married." "Yes, ma'am." Danny had fallen asleep in the car, his small body exhausted from fear and adrenaline. Olivia carried him inside, her wrist throbbing where the attacker had twisted it, but she refused to let anyone else hold her son. The interior was surprisingly homey. Hardwood floors, comfortable furniture, a kitchen that actually looked used. Framed artwork on the walls. Nothing expensive, just pleasant landscapes and abstract pieces. A bookshelf filled with novels and board games. "There are 3 bedrooms upstairs," Marco explained, keeping his voice low so as not to wake Danny. "Master suite for you. Smaller room for your son, right next door. The 3rd bedroom is for the on-duty guard. There's always someone in the house and 2 more outside." "How many people are protecting us?" 6-man rotation. 2 inside, 2 outside, 2 resting. They change every 8 hours. Olivia's head spun. 6 armed men, watching her every move, every hour of every day. It felt suffocating and comforting at the same time. Marco led her upstairs and opened the door to what would be Danny's room. It was painted a soft blue, with a twin bed already made up with fresh sheets. Someone had even put a stuffed dinosaur on the pillow, Danny's favorite animal. "How did you know?" Olivia started. "Mr. Caruso is thorough. We checked your son's social media, asked his teacher about his interests. We wanted him to feel comfortable." She didn't know whether to be grateful or disturbed that they'd researched her 7-year-old. Olivia laid Danny gently on the bed and pulled the blanket over him. He stirred slightly, mumbling something about robots, then settled back into sleep. She kissed his forehead, lingering there, breathing in the familiar scent of his shampoo, the one thing that still felt normal. "The master bedroom is through here," Marco said, gesturing to an adjoining door. Her room was larger, with a queen-sized bed, an ensuite bathroom, and windows overlooking the street, though she noticed the bulletproof glass and reinforced frames. A dresser stood against one wall, and when she opened it, she found clothes in her exact size. Jeans, t-shirts, sweaters, even pajamas. All brand new, tags still attached. "Your apartment was compromised," Marco explained, reading her expression. "We couldn't risk sending someone to collect your things. Mr. Caruso had these purchased. If anything doesn't fit or you need something specific, just let me know." Olivia sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly overwhelmed. Her apartment. Her home. The place where she'd built her life, where Danny had taken his first steps, where every corner held memories. "What happened to my apartment?" she asked quietly.
Marco hesitated.
"You should rest first. It's been a difficult night. Tell me."
He sighed.
"After the incident at the wedding, Mr. Caruso sent men to secure your residence. When they arrived, your front door had been forced open. The apartment had been searched." Olivia's stomach dropped. "Searched for what?" "We don't know. They were looking for something, papers, maybe, or evidence of where you might run. They didn't take electronics or valuables. Just looked." She thought about her small apartment, Danny's toys scattered across the living room floor, her bills and mail on the kitchen counter, photos on the walls of the 2 of them at the park, at his birthday parties, on their rare days at the beach. Strangers had been through all of it, touching everything, invading the only space that was truly theirs. "Is it safe to go back?" she asked, though she already knew the answer.
No.
"They know where you live. They'll be watching it." "What about my job? I'm supposed to work tomorrow night. Mr. Caruso is handling it. You'll receive full salary while you're here, and your employer has been told you're dealing with a family emergency. He can't just." "He can, and he has." Marco's voice was gentle but firm. "I understand this is difficult. Your independence, your routine, your control, it's all been taken from you. But right now, the priority is keeping you and your son alive. Olivia wanted to argue, to insist she could handle this herself, but the memory of that knife at Danny's throat silenced her. She'd never felt so powerless. Can I at least call my mother? She watches Danny sometimes. She'll worry when we don't come home. Already done. Mr. Caruso called her himself, told her you and Danny are taking a short vacation. She thinks you won a contest at work, a weekend getaway to the mountains. She believed that. Mr. Caruso can be very convincing. Olivia laughed bitterly. I bet he can. Marco moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Mrs. Olivia, Mr. Caruso doesn't take protection details personally. But this one, he's treating it like your family. I've worked for him for 15 years, and I've never seen him this invested in someone's safety. Because he owes me a debt. Maybe. Or maybe because you're one of the few people who ever helped him without wanting something in return. That's rare in his world. Unique, even. After Marco left, Olivia checked on Danny one more time, still sleeping peacefully, unaware of how dramatically his life had just changed. She returned to her room and caught sight of herself in the mirror above the dresser. Her lip was swollen where the attacker had hit her. Her wrist was bruised and tender. Her cheap Target dress was torn at the hem and stained with dirt from the parking lot pavement. She looked like a stranger, someone who'd been through a war. She was supposed to be at home right now, tucking Danny into his own bed, maybe watching a little TV before her shift tomorrow. Instead, she was in a stranger's house, under armed guard, hiding from people who wanted to use her as leverage against a crime boss. All because she'd stopped to help a bleeding man in a parking lot 5 years ago. Olivia stripped off the ruined dress and pulled on the new pajamas someone had bought for her, soft cotton that fit perfectly. She climbed into the unfamiliar bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Every creak of the house, every sound from the street outside, sent her heart racing. Somewhere in the city, Dante Caruso was hunting the people who'd tried to take her son. And Olivia realized, with a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature, that she was hoping he'd find them. Olivia woke to voices downstairs. The bedside clock read 2:47 a.m. She'd only been asleep for an hour, her rest fitful and filled with nightmares of masked men and Danny screaming her name. The voices were low but urgent, men talking in the clipped tones of people exchanging important information. She slipped out of bed and cracked open her door. Danny was still asleep in the next room, his soft snoring audible through the thin wall. The voices were coming from the living room below. Against her better judgment, Olivia crept to the top of the stairs. Trace the burner phone. A voice she didn't recognize was saying. Bought 3 days ago at a convenience store in Stamford. Cash transaction, but the store had cameras. And that was Marco, Viktor Sokolov's crew. 2 of the men from the parking lot have known associations with his organization. The third is a freelancer, but he's worked for Sokolov before. Olivia's blood ran cold. She'd heard that name at the wedding. Dante had mentioned it when talking to Richard Wexford. So Sokolov knows about the woman, Marco said. The question is how. That's what Mr. Caruso is finding out right now. Olivia descended 2 more steps, staying in the shadows. Through the railing, she could see 3 of Dante's men in the living room, laptops open on the coffee table, phones pressed to ears. Has Wexford talked? One asked. He's talking.
Caruso's very
persuasive. Where are they? Wexford's study. His wife and daughter are at a hotel. They don't know anything. Caruso made sure of that. Olivia's heart hammered. Dante was here. In this house.
right now.
She moved down another step, then another, drawn by a need to understand what was happening. The men were too focused on their work to notice her. She slipped past the living room entrance and followed the hallway toward the back of the house, where light spilled from beneath a closed door. She pressed her ear to the wood. Swear I didn't know they'd go after her. Richard Wexford's voice was high-pitched with fear. Sokolov just asked if you had any outstanding debts, any vulnerabilities. And you told him about Olivia. Dante's voice was quiet. Dangerously quiet. I didn't give him her name. I mentioned that you'd been searching for someone. That you seemed interested in a woman at the wedding. I thought. You thought you could buy favor with my enemy by giving him information about me. I owe Sokolov money. A lot of money. He said if I helped him, he'd forgive the debt. I didn't think he'd actually hurt anyone. I thought he'd just use it as, I don't know, negotiation leverage or something. There was a pause. Then the sound of something heavy hitting wood, Dante's fist on the desk, maybe. How much do you owe him? 3 million. I made some bad investments, got involved in shipping deals that went south. Sokolov fronted me the money to cover the losses, but the interest, God, the interest is killing me. So you traded a woman's life, and her child's life, to clear your debt. I didn't think.
No.
You didn't. Dante's voice dropped even lower. Tell me everything. Every conversation you've had with Sokolov. Every piece of information you gave him. Every deal you've made. And if you lie to me even once, Richard, I will make you wish those men in the parking lot had taken you instead of her. Olivia heard Richard's breathing. Ragged, panicked. Then he started talking. He'd first contacted Sokolov 2 years ago when his investment firm started hemorrhaging money. Sokolov had loaned him cash to cover the losses, but with strings attached. Richard had to provide information, shipping schedules, police movements, details about other wealthy families in Connecticut who might be vulnerable to pressure. It had started small. Harmless, Richard insisted. But then the requests got bigger. More dangerous. Last month, Sokolov asked specifically about you, Richard said. He wanted to know if you had any weak spots. Anyone you cared about. Anyone you owed. I didn't know anything. You keep your personal life locked down. But then my daughter's wedding was coming up, and my wife mentioned that her aunt's distant nephew, your late wife's family, had helped put together the guest list. And you realized I'd be there, Dante said. I told Sokolov you might attend. He told me to watch you, to report anything unusual. When you walked in and went straight to that woman, when you said her name like she mattered, I knew that was what he wanted. So, you called him immediately.
Yes.
He told me to keep her at the reception as long as possible, to make sure she'd have to walk through that section of the parking lot when she left. He said his men would handle the rest. Olivia's hands were shaking. This man, this wealthy, respectable businessman, had sold her out to save himself. Had put a target on Danny's back because of his own greed and cowardice. What else? Dante demanded. That's everything. I swear. You're lying. I'm not. The sound of a gun cocking silenced Richard's protests. Olivia's breath stopped. I'm going to ask you one more time, Dante said, his voice like ice. What else? A long pause. Then Richard's voice, barely a whisper. Sokolov wants her alive. He said she's more valuable as a hostage than dead. He thinks if he has her, he can negotiate with you, force you to back off some territories he's been trying to expand into. And if I don't negotiate, then he'll hurt her. Make an example. Send you pieces until you cooperate. Olivia's stomach turned. She pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from making a sound. How much did he pay you for this information? Dante asked. 200,000. Wired to an offshore account. You sold a woman's life for $200,000. I had no choice. Sokolov would have killed me if I didn't.
No, Richard.
You had a choice. You chose money over morality. You chose your comfort over someone else's safety. And now you're going to pay for that choice. What are you going to do? I'm going to make you worthless to Sokolov. I'm going to destroy every business deal you've made with him, expose every illegal transaction, and make sure that helping you costs him far more than it benefits him. By morning, you'll be a liability instead of an asset. But my family, my business. Should have thought of that before you put a price on an innocent woman's head. Olivia heard footsteps approaching the door and scrambled backward, pressing herself against the wall. The door opened and Dante emerged, his face a mask of controlled fury. He saw her immediately. How much did you hear? He asked. Enough, her voice shook. He sold me. For money. Dante's expression softened slightly. Yes. He did. And Sokolov, he wants to. She couldn't finish the sentence.
He won't get the chance.
I promise you that. Behind Dante, Richard appeared in the doorway, his face pale and sweating. When he saw Olivia, guilt and shame flickered across his features. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Olivia stared at him. This man who'd smiled and shaken hands at his daughter's wedding, who'd probably given a touching father of the bride speech, who'd seemed like every other wealthy Connecticut businessman, and who'd handed her and her son over to criminals without a second thought. Your sorry means nothing, she said, her voice cold. I hope you lose everything. She turned and walked back toward the stairs, leaving both men behind. But she heard Dante's final words to Richard, quiet and lethal. You will. 3 days passed in the safe house. Danny adapted surprisingly well. He thought they were on vacation, an adventure, as Olivia had carefully explained. The guards let him play video games with them during their breaks, and Marco brought him books and puzzles to keep him occupied. He missed his friends from school, but the novelty of the situation kept him distracted. Olivia, however, felt like she was suffocating. On the morning of the 4th day, Dante arrived at the safe house with his laptop and a grim expression. Marco let him in without question, and Dante found Olivia in the kitchen, nursing her 3rd cup of coffee, while Danny watched cartoons in the living room. I need to show you something, Dante said without preamble. Good morning to you too, Olivia replied, but there was no real bite to it. She was too exhausted for hostility. Dante set his laptop on the kitchen table and opened it. The screen displayed what looked like financial spreadsheets, shipping manifests, and email chains. Richard Wexford's empire, Dante said, pulling out a chair. What's left of it, anyway? Olivia sat down slowly. What did you do? I kept my promise. I made him worthless to Sokolov. Dante clicked through several documents. For the past 3 days, I've been systematically dismantling every illegal operation Richard was involved in. Not with violence, with information. He pulled up an email chain.
Here.
Richard was facilitating shipments of counterfeit pharmaceuticals through his import company. I sent detailed documentation to the FDA, complete with warehouse locations and distribution networks. Another click. His offshore accounts with Sokolov? I leaked them to the IRS. They'll freeze everything while they investigate tax evasion. Another. The shipping contracts he had with Sokolov's front companies? I anonymously tipped off Sokolov's competitors about the routes and schedules. They've already intercepted 2 shipments. Sokolov lost over $1 million in merchandise. Olivia stared at the screen, her mind struggling to process the scale of what Dante had done. You destroyed his entire business. Not his legitimate business. Just the parts that connected him to Sokolov. Richard's investment firm is still operational, barely. His reputation is damaged, but he's not bankrupt.
Yet.
Why not finish him off completely? Dante looked at her with something like approval. Because dead men and bankrupted men are unpredictable. They do desperate things. But a man who's been carefully dismantled, who knows exactly how much power you have over him, who understands that you can destroy him completely whenever you choose. That man becomes manageable. You're leaving him alive as a warning. I'm leaving him alive because his daughter just got married, and his wife had nothing to do with his choices. I don't punish innocent people. Dante closed the laptop. But Richard knows now that he's on a leash. One wrong move, one whisper to Sokolov, and I'll finish what I started. Olivia leaned back in her chair. What about Sokolov? If you've cost him money and exposed his operations, won't that make him angrier? More dangerous?
Yes.
But it also makes Richard useless as an informant. Sokolov doesn't reward people who cost him money. By now, he's realized that Richard's information led to compromised shipments and frozen accounts. Richard has become a liability. So Sokolov will cut ties. Violently, probably. But that's Richard's problem now, not ours. The coldness in Dante's voice sent a chill through Olivia. This was his world. Calculated moves, leveraging information, destroying people's lives with spreadsheets instead of bullets. It was somehow more frightening than the violence she'd witnessed. You did all this without killing anyone, she said quietly. Violence is expensive and draws attention. Information is clean, efficient, and authorities do the work for you. Dante met her eyes. You think I'm a monster who solves problems with guns. Sometimes I am. But more often, I solve them with bank transfers and anonymous tips. That doesn't make it less terrifying. It's not supposed to comfort you. It's supposed to keep you alive. Danny's laughter drifted from the living room. He was playing some game with one of the guards, oblivious to the conversation happening 10 feet away. What happens now? Olivia asked. Richard's neutralized, but Sokolov still knows about me. He still wants to use me as leverage.
Yes.
Which is why the next phase is more delicate. Dante pulled out his phone and showed her a series of photos, surveillance shots of men in dark clothes, watching the safe house from various positions. These were taken yesterday. Sokolov's people have been trying to track you. They haven't found this location yet, but they're looking. Olivia's chest tightened. How long before they do? Could be days. Could be weeks. They're professionals, but so are my people. So, I'm just supposed to hide here forever? Keep Danny locked in this house, pretending we're on vacation, while you play chess with criminals?
No.
You're supposed to trust me for another 72 hours. Why 72 hours? Dante's expression hardened. Because that's how long it will take me to make Sokolov believe you're not worth pursuing anymore. How are you going to do that? By showing him that the cost of coming after you exceeds any benefit he'd gain. By hitting his operations hard enough that he has bigger problems than one potential hostage. By making him understand that you're under my protection, and that protection is absolute. Olivia studied his face, the sharp lines, the cold determination, the barely contained violence lurking beneath the surface. You're going to war with him. I'm going to remind him why people don't cross me. Dante stood, collecting his laptop. And when I'm done, he'll forget your name. He'll forget Danny exists. He'll be too busy trying to salvage what's left of his organization to care about revenge. And if he doesn't forget, Dante paused at the kitchen doorway. Then I'll make sure he can't remember anything at all. The implication was clear. Olivia should have been horrified. Should have protested, insisted there had to be another way, some solution that didn't involve more violence and destruction. But when she thought about the knife at Danny's throat, about the men who'd searched her apartment, about Richard casually selling her life for profit, she found she didn't care what Dante did to Viktor Sokolov. How can I help? The words surprised her as much as they seemed to surprise Dante. He turned back, studying her carefully. You want to help? You said I'm part of this now. That my choice was taken away when you said my name. So I might as well be useful. A slow smile crossed Dante's face, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. You're tougher than you look, Olivia Reed. I'm a single mother who's worked 3 jobs at once. Tough is the only way I know how to be. Dante nodded slowly. Then stay alert. Stay safe. Take care of your son. And when this is over, you can go back to your life. Will I though? Olivia asked. Will I ever really be able to go back? After everything I've seen, everything I know now. Dante's smile faded. I don't know. But I'll make sure you have the chance to try. He left without another word, and Olivia sat alone in the kitchen, listening to her son's laughter and wondering if normal was something she'd ever feel again. Outside, through the bulletproof windows, she saw Dante's SUV pull away. The war had begun. The first strike came that night. Olivia was reading Danny a bedtime story when she heard Marco's phone buzz. He stepped into the hallway, spoke in urgent whispers, then returned with a slight nod. What happened? Olivia asked, once Danny was asleep. Marco hesitated, then gestured for her to follow him downstairs. In the living room, 3 guards were clustered around a laptop, watching news footage. Explosion at a warehouse in Port Chester, the reporter was saying. Authorities say no one was injured, but the building, which was listed as storing automotive parts, appears to have been completely destroyed. Fire marshals are investigating the cause. Sokolov's warehouse, Marco said quietly. He was using it to store stolen electronics before shipping them overseas. Mr. Caruso made sure it was empty before blowing it up, Olivia finished. The authorities will find evidence of the stolen goods in the rubble. Sokolov will lose the merchandise, the location, and face federal charges for the theft. Olivia watched the flames on the screen, orange and hungry against the night sky. Dante said he'd hit Sokolov hard. I didn't think he meant literally. Mr. Caruso doesn't make idle threats. The second strike came the following afternoon. Olivia was helping Danny with a puzzle when Dante himself arrived, looking exhausted but satisfied. He declined coffee and went straight to the point. Sokolov had 3 city councilmen on his payroll, Dante said, spreading documents across the coffee table. They were pushing through zoning changes that would benefit his real estate investments. I've sent evidence of the bribes to every major news outlet in the state. By tomorrow morning, all 3 will be facing corruption charges. Won't that expose your own operations? Olivia asked. If you're in the same business. I'm not. I don't bribe politicians. I find it distasteful and unreliable. But Sokolov built his expansion strategy around political influence. Without those councilmen, his entire development plan collapses. How much will that cost him? Conservatively, $20 million in lost investments. Plus the legal fees for the councilmen, who will definitely give him up to reduce their own sentences. Danny looked up from his puzzle. Are you my mom's friend? Dante's expression softened, something Olivia didn't think possible. I'm trying to be. Do you like dinosaurs? I can't say I've given them much thought. You should. They're cool. Danny returned to his puzzle, the conversation apparently complete. Dante met Olivia's eyes, and for just a moment, she saw something vulnerable there. Uncertainty. Like he didn't know how to talk to a 7-year-old and was afraid of getting it wrong. He's a good kid, Dante said quietly. The best, Olivia agreed. The third strike happened on day 3, and this one Dante let Olivia witness directly. He arrived at dawn and asked if she wanted to take a drive. Marco assured her Danny would be safe with the guards, so Olivia agreed, curious and slightly terrified about what Dante wanted to show her. They drove for 20 minutes, ending up at a marina on Long Island Sound. Expensive boats bobbed in their slips, and the morning sun painted everything gold. Sokolov owns a yacht, Dante explained as they walked down the dock. Not registered in his name, of course. Shell company, offshore accounts, the usual tricks. He uses it for meetings with his upper-level people, thinks the open water makes him safe from surveillance. Does it? Usually Dante smiled grimly. But I have excellent sources. He led her to a specific slip where a gleaming white yacht was moored. Sleek and modern, probably worth millions. The authorities will find 50 kilograms of uncut cocaine in the hidden compartment beneath the master cabin in approximately, he checked his watch, 4 minutes. Anonymous tip, of course. As if on cue, police vehicles began arriving at the marina entrance, lights flashing. You planted drugs on his boat, Olivia said, stunned. I planted his own drugs on his boat. They were already there. I just made sure the authorities knew where to look. They watched from a safe distance as officers swarmed the yacht. Dante's phone buzzed with updates from his people. The drugs were found. The boat was being seized. Warrants were being issued. That's it then? Olivia asked. 3 strikes and Sokolov's done? Not done. Wounded. Distracted. And most importantly, desperate. Dante's expression darkened. A desperate man makes mistakes. And when he makes his next mistake, I'll be ready. They drove back to the safe house in silence. Olivia kept thinking about the warehouse explosion, the corrupt councilman, the seized yacht. Dante had dismantled Sokolov's operation piece by piece, surgically removing his power base. But something bothered her. This is all very calculated, she said as they pulled up to the brownstone. Very precise. But Sokolov knows it's you doing this, right? He knows why you're targeting him. Of course. So, why hasn't he come after me harder? If he knows you're protecting me, why not make a bigger move? Dante turned off the engine, his hands still on the wheel. Because he's been too busy putting out fires. Every time he tries to regroup, another part of his empire collapses. He doesn't have the resources to mount a serious assault on this location. But eventually, he'll either accept that you're untouchable and move on, or he'll make one last desperate play to get to you. Dante finally looked at her. Which is why tonight, we're moving you. Olivia's stomach dropped. Moving us where? Somewhere even I don't know. Marco will handle it. You'll have new guards, a new location. Complete isolation until this is finished. And you. I'm going to end this. One way or another. The finality in his voice was chilling. Olivia thought about asking what he meant, but she already knew. The 72 hours were up. The strategic phase was over. Now came the violence. When this is done, Olivia said carefully, and Danny and I are safe. I never want to see you again. Dante nodded slowly. I understand.
I'm grateful.
Truly. You've kept your promise. But this world you live in, it's not mine. It can't be mine. I know. So we're clear? When this ends, we're strangers again. Dante held her gaze for a long moment. When this ends, Olivia, you'll never be in danger again. You'll go back to your life, raise your son, work your job. And you'll never have to think about me or my world. Good. But even as she said it, Olivia wondered if that was really possible. Could you unknow the things she'd learned? Unsee the things she'd witnessed? Could you really go back after crossing a line like this? Dante seemed to read her thoughts. It's possible to move forward without forgetting. To be grateful for protection without embracing what provided it. You sound like you're speaking from experience. My wife, Dante said quietly. She wasn't from this world either. She struggled with it every day. But she found a way to love me while hating what I did. It's possible. She died? Olivia asked gently.
Cancer.
3 years ago. His voice was flat, emotionless. Nothing I could fix with money or power or violence.
Just.
Time running out. For the first time, Olivia saw Dante Caruso not as a mafia boss or a dangerous protector, but as a man who'd lost someone he loved and didn't know how to fill that empty space. I'm sorry, she said. So am I. He opened his door. Come on. Let's get you and Danny ready to move. We leave in 2 hours. As they walked back into the safe house, Olivia realized the 72 hours had changed her. She wasn't the same woman who'd walked into that wedding reception. And she wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. The new location wasn't a house. Marco drove them for nearly 2 hours, taking random turns and backtracking multiple times to ensure they weren't followed. Danny fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the sudden move. Olivia watched the landscape change from suburban neighborhoods to rural farmland, then back to scattered houses and industrial areas. Finally, they pulled into what looked like an old converted firehouse on the outskirts of a small town. The building was brick and solid, with minimal windows and a single reinforced entrance. This is it? Olivia asked, helping a groggy Danny out of the car. Used to be a fire station until the town built a new one, Marco explained, unlocking the heavy steel door. Mr. Caruso bought it 5 years ago, renovated the interior, kept the exterior looking abandoned. Perfect safe house. Nobody looks twice at old municipal buildings. Inside was surprisingly comfortable. The main floor had been converted into an open living space with a kitchenette, comfortable furniture, and even a television. Upstairs, where the firefighters' quarters used to be, were 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. But it was the basement that made Olivia understand why Dante chose this place. Reinforced concrete walls, Marco said, showing her the space. Only one entrance, through a steel door with 3 separate locks. If someone breaches the upper floors, you come down here. There's enough food and water for 2 weeks, communications equipment, and he opened a cabinet, revealing weapons, everything you need to defend yourself if it comes to that. You think it will come to that? Olivia's voice was steadier than she felt. Mr. Caruso doesn't think so. But he plans for worst-case scenarios. New guards arrived, men Olivia hadn't met before. Marco introduced them briefly. Luis, a former Marine, Chen, who barely spoke but moved like a shadow, and surprisingly, a woman named Sophia who had kind eyes and a gun strapped to her hip. I requested her, Marco said quietly. Thought you might be more comfortable with another woman around. It was a small kindness, but it meant something. Olivia nodded gratefully. Over the next 2 days, life settled into an odd routine. Danny thought they were camping in a cool old building, and the guards let him explore the vintage fire pole, now safely secured, and showed him the old equipment storage areas. Sophia taught him card games and played endless rounds of Go Fish. Olivia tried to stay busy, reading books Marco brought, helping prepare meals, anything to keep her mind from spiraling. But at night, alone in her room, fear crept in. What was Dante doing? Was he safe? Was Sokolov planning something terrible? On the third day, Dante finally came. He arrived alone, in an unmarked sedan rather than his usual convoy. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his usual meticulous appearance slightly disheveled. But there was something else in his expression. Satisfaction. Relief. "It's over," he said without preamble. Olivia had been washing dishes. She set down the plate carefully, her hands trembling. "What do you mean?" "Sokolov. He's done." Marco, Luis, and Sophia had gathered in the living room, listening intently. Danny was upstairs, napping after lunch. "What happened?" Olivia asked. Dante sat down heavily on the couch, like a man who'd been carrying a massive weight, and finally set it down. After the yacht seizure, Sokolov became desperate. He started making mistakes, moving product without proper security, meeting his lieutenants in exposed locations, using phones that weren't secure. My people documented everything. He pulled out his phone and showed her photos, surveillance shots of men in suits, meeting in parking lots and restaurants. Yesterday, the FBI raided 6 of his locations simultaneously. They found enough evidence to indict him on racketeering, drug trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy charges. He's facing 40 years minimum. The FBI just happened to raid him. A ghost of a smile crossed Dante's face. "I may have provided an anonymous tip, with extensive documentation. The kind of documentation that only someone with inside knowledge could provide. You had someone inside his organization for 3 years, waiting for the right moment to use him." Dante's expression hardened. Sokolov thought he was untouchable. He thought his political connections and careful operations made him safe. But everyone has vulnerabilities if you look long enough. Olivia sank into a chair across from him. "So he's in prison. Federal custody. Being held without bail due to flight risk. His assets are frozen. His organization is scrambling without leadership, and his former associates are already trying to cut deals by testifying against him. And Richard Wexford, being questioned as a potential witness. He's cooperating fully, of course, trying to save whatever he can of his life." Dante's voice dripped with contempt. "He'll probably avoid prison by testifying, but his reputation is destroyed. His business partners have already started distancing themselves." Olivia tried to process it all. "So I'm safe? Danny's safe?"
Yes.
Sokolov's people have bigger concerns now than one potential hostage. Without their leader, without funding, without organization, they're no threat to you. Relief flooded through her, so intense it was almost painful. "We can go home. You can go home. Tomorrow if you want. I'll have your apartment secured and cleaned. New locks, security system, the works. And I'll have people watching the building for the next few months, just to be sure." "But you said it's over." "It is. But I'm careful." Dante met her eyes. "You and Danny will be protected, even if you never see me again. That's my promise." The weight of those words settled between them. This was it.
The end.
"What happens to you now?" Olivia asked. "I go back to my life. My business. The world keeps turning." "And the debt? You said you owed me." "The debt is paid. You're alive, your son is safe, and the threat is eliminated. That's what I promised on that terrace." Olivia stood and walked to the window, looking out at the empty street. "I should thank you. You saved our lives. You saved mine first. This just makes us even." "Does it though?" She turned back to him. "You've spent months looking for me, risked your resources protecting me, went to war with a rival organization. That seems like more than repaying a debt." Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. My wife used to say that the world needs people like you. People who help without expecting reward. Who see someone bleeding in a parking lot and stop, even when it's dangerous, even when it costs them something. She sounds wise. She was. And she would have liked you, he stood, straightening his jacket. I'll arrange transportation for tomorrow morning. You'll be home by noon. Your job has been told you'll return next week. Your mother thinks you want a vacation package. Everything goes back to normal. Except nothing will ever be normal again, will it? Dante paused at the door.
No.
But normal is overrated anyway. After he left, Olivia went upstairs to check on Danny. He was awake now, playing with toy cars Sophia had found somewhere. Mom, are we going home soon? Tomorrow, baby. We're going home tomorrow. Can I bring the fire pole? She laughed, actually laughed for the first time in days.
No, sweetheart.
The fire pole stays here. That's not fair. Life rarely is. But we'll be okay. As she tucked him back into bed that night, Olivia realized she meant it. They would be okay. Different, changed, scarred by the experience, but okay. She'd walked into a wedding reception as an invisible single mother and walked out as someone a crime boss considered worth protecting. She'd seen violence and power and the dark machinery that ran beneath society's surface. And somehow, impossibly, she'd survived. Outside, in the darkness, she heard Dante's car pull away. Tomorrow, her old life would be waiting. She just had to figure out how to live it with these new eyes. The apartment building looked exactly the same. Marco drove them home the next morning, with Luis following in a second car. Danny pressed his face against the window, excited to see his familiar neighborhood. The corner store where they bought ice cream, the park where he played, the bus stop where Olivia caught her ride to work. Everything looked normal, untouched, like the past 2 weeks had been a fever dream. We've had people watching the building since the incident, Marco said, pulling up to the curb. No suspicious activity. No one asking questions about you. Sokolov's people have completely backed off. Olivia unbuckled Danny's seatbelt, her hands shaking slightly. She'd imagined this moment, coming home, but now that it was here, she felt strangely nervous. Mom, can I go to the park later? Danny asked, already reaching for the car door. Maybe tomorrow, baby. Let's just settle in first. They climbed the 3 flights of stairs to her apartment. The hallway smelled like Mrs. Chen's cooking from 3B, garlic and ginger, comforting and familiar. Olivia's hands trembled as she reached for her keys, then remembered the door had been broken. But when Marco opened it, using a new key he handed to her, the door was perfect.
New.
The frame had been repaired and reinforced, and 3 shiny new locks gleamed in the overhead light. Mr. Caruso had the door replaced, Marco explained. Steel core, reinforced frame. The locks are top grade. You're safer than you were before. Olivia stepped inside and stopped breathing. Her apartment, her small, shabby, barely holding together apartment, had been transformed. The broken lock on her bedroom door?
Fixed.
The cracked tile in the bathroom that she'd been meaning to replace for a year? New flooring, gleaming white. The water stain on the living room ceiling from the leak upstairs? Patched and painted. What? She started, but her voice caught. Danny ran ahead, exploring. Mom, come look. She followed him to his bedroom, her heart hammering. The room she'd left, with its peeling paint and the window that never quite closed, was pristine. Fresh paint in his favorite shade of blue. New curtains. The window had been replaced with one that actually sealed properly. And on his bed, carefully arranged, were all his toys, including the robot that had been missing since the attack. Danny grabbed it, squealing with delight. Rusty. They found Rusty. Olivia's eyes burned with tears. The robot had been broken. She remembered one of the attackers knocking it from Danny's backpack. But now it was whole again, perfectly repaired, like it had never been damaged. How did, she whispered. Marco stood in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. Mr. Caruso's people recovered it during the cleanup. He had it repaired by a specialist. Wanted to make sure your son got it back. Olivia walked back to the living room in a daze. Everything had been cleaned, repaired, improved. Her second-hand couch had been professionally cleaned. The wobbly kitchen table she bought at a yard sale had been fixed. Even her small collection of plants, which she'd been certain would be dead by now, were thriving, clearly watered and cared for. On the kitchen counter, she found an envelope. Her name was written on it in elegant handwriting. Inside was a simple note. Your home should feel safe again. Consider this part of making things right.
D.
Beneath the note was something else. A bank statement. Her bank statement. With a deposit dated 3 days ago.
$52.
Olivia's knees went weak. She gripped the counter for support. That can't be. This is too much. Mr. Caruso wanted to ensure you had a cushion, Marco said quietly. For lost wages, emotional distress, and to help you rebuild stability. He was quite insistent. I can't accept this. It's too much money. I didn't do this for money, which is exactly why he gave it. You never asked for anything. So, he's giving you what you need anyway. Olivia sank into a kitchen chair, staring at the number.
$52.
More money than she'd seen in her entire life. Enough to pay off her credit cards, fix her car, maybe even take some classes to get a better job. Enough to give Danny opportunities she'd never been able to afford. He doesn't want anything in return, Marco added, reading her thoughts. No debt, no obligation. Just peace of mind that you and your son have what you need. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Mr. Caruso doesn't expect gratitude. Danny ran back into the living room, clutching Rusty. Mom, can we order pizza? I miss pizza. Olivia laughed through her tears. Yeah, baby. We can order pizza. Marco moved toward the door. I'll leave you to settle in. The security system panel is by the front door. I'll show you how to use it before I go. And this. He handed her a phone, different from the burner Dante had given her before. Has one number programmed. Only for emergencies. Real emergencies. Will I ever see him again? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Marco paused, his hand on the doorknob. Mr. Caruso believes clean breaks are kindest. You wanted your normal life back. He's giving you that. But he'll know you're safe. He'll always know. That's how he operates. After Marco showed her the security system, cameras at the door, panic button by her bed, direct line to a monitoring service, and finally left, Olivia stood in her renovated apartment, holding a bank statement that represented more money than she'd ever imagined having, while her son played happily with his repaired robot. She thought about Dante Caruso, ruthless crime boss, killer, criminal, who'd spent weeks protecting her, who'd gone to war to keep her safe, who'd quietly repaired her broken home and given her financial security without asking for anything in return. The man who'd saved her life because she'd once saved his. The debt was paid, he'd said. They were even. But standing in her transformed apartment, looking at Danny's joy, feeling the weight of security she hadn't known in years, Olivia realized they'd never be even. She'd stopped his bleeding in a parking lot, asking for nothing. He'd given her back her life, asking for nothing. Maybe that was its own kind of balance. That evening, after pizza and letting Danny stay up late watching his favorite cartoons, Olivia tucked him into bed. He hugged Rusty close, already half asleep. Mom, is the adventure over? He asked drowsily. Yes, sweetheart. The adventure is over. We're home. Good. I like the fire pole, but I like my bed better. She kissed his forehead. Me too. Later, alone in her own room, with its new lock and fresh paint and window that actually closed properly, Olivia looked at the phone Marco had given her. One number. For emergencies only. She wondered if she'd ever use it. Wondered if she'd ever see Dante Caruso again. Wondered if somewhere in the city he was wondering the same thing. Then she set the phone in her bedside drawer, turned off the light, and tried to remember what normal felt like. It felt safe. It felt strange. It felt like a gift she hadn't earned but desperately needed. Tomorrow, she'd return to work. Danny would go back to school. They'd slip back into their old routines, their old life. But tonight, in the darkness, Olivia admitted what she couldn't say out loud. She was grateful, and she'd never forget the man who'd kept his promise. 3 weeks passed. Olivia returned to work at the warehouse, explaining to her supervisor that the family emergency had been resolved. Her coworkers asked polite questions, and she gave vague answers. Nobody pushed. Nobody really cared that much. Danny went back to school, rejoining his second-grade class like he'd never left. He told his friends he'd been on vacation, showed them pictures on Olivia's phone of the cool old firehouse they'd stayed in. The teacher smiled and welcomed him back. Life resumed its familiar rhythm. Except nothing felt the same. Olivia noticed things now that she'd never paid attention to before. The black sedan that was always parked across from her building, different drivers, but always the same model. The way certain people in her neighborhood, the bodega owner, the super in her building, even Mrs. Chun from 3B, seemed a little too aware of her comings and goings, a little too quick to offer help if she needed anything. Dante had said he'd have people watching. She hadn't realized how constant that watching would be. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt safe. One Saturday afternoon, she took Danny to the park, the same park they'd always gone to, with the rusty swings and the sandbox that probably needed new sand. Danny ran off to play with some kids from his class, and Olivia sat on her usual bench. A woman sat down beside her. Late 30s, dressed casually in jeans and a jacket, reading a paperback novel. Sophia. Enjoying your book? Olivia asked quietly. Sophia didn't look up. It's terrible, but it passes the time. You don't have to do this. Dante said the threat was over. Mr. Caruso believes in being thorough. And honestly, Sophia finally glanced at her. I've had worse assignments. Your kid's cute. Makes me think about having one of my own someday. Does Dante know I've noticed the surveillance? Probably. He's not stupid. But as long as you don't complain, neither will he. They sat in silence for a moment, watching Danny build a sand castle with 2 other children. How is he? Olivia asked.
Dante. Busy.
Back to running his empire. Why do you ask? I don't know. Olivia trailed off. She didn't know how to explain the strange feelings she'd had lately. Like she'd left something unfinished, something unsaid. He asks about you, Sophia said softly. Every few days. Wants to know if you're settling in okay, if you need anything, if Danny's adjusting. He won't call you directly, thinks it's better to keep distance, but he asks. Something warm and complicated twisted in Olivia's chest. Tell him we're fine. I will. Sophia stood, tucked her terrible novel under her arm, and walked away, blending into the park crowd like she'd never been there. Work became easier with the money Dante had given her. Olivia paid off her credit cards, bought Danny new clothes that actually fit, and started taking online classes in healthcare administration, finally using that EMT training for something more than saving bleeding strangers in parking lots. She kept waiting for the catch. For Dante to call in a favor, to ask for something in return, to remind her that nothing was ever truly free in his world. But weeks passed, and nothing came. One evening, her mother called. Olivia, honey, I've been meaning to tell you, someone paid off my mortgage. Olivia's blood went cold. What? Last week. Anonymous payment. The bank said someone wired the full remaining balance. I thought maybe it was a mistake, but my lawyer checked, it's legitimate. The house is mine, completely paid off. Her mother's mortgage. The one she'd been struggling with since Olivia's father died. The one that kept her working past retirement age.
Dante. Mom, I
don't know what to say. Do you know anything about this? The payment came right after you got back from your vacation. Olivia closed her eyes. I might. Let me make some calls. After hanging up, she stared at the emergency phone in her bedside drawer. She'd promised herself she wouldn't use it unless absolutely necessary. This wasn't an emergency,
but it was something she needed to address.
She picked up the phone and dialed the only number saved. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Olivia. Just her name. Like he'd been expecting her call. My mother's mortgage, she said. You paid it off. Yes.
Why?
You already gave me $50,000. You fixed my apartment. You've had people watching us for weeks. When does it end, Dante? A pause. Then, quietly, when I'm certain you're not just safe, but stable. Your mother was struggling. You were sending her money you couldn't afford. I removed that burden. You can't just fix everyone's problems. I can, and I am. Because 5 years ago, you fixed mine without asking for anything. So now I'm returning the favor. This isn't returning a favor. This is.
I don't even know what this is.
It's making sure that the one truly good person I've met in this business isn't destroyed by the ripple effects of my world touching hers. Olivia sat down on her bed, phone pressed to her ear. I didn't call to yell at you. I called to say, thank you. For my mom. For everything. But also to ask, when will you stop? When you don't need protection anymore. And when will that be? I don't know. Maybe never. Maybe tomorrow. But until then you have it. She could hear something in his voice, not the cold crime boss or the calculated strategist, but something softer. Something almost lonely. Are you okay? She asked before she could stop herself. Another pause, longer this time. Why do you ask? Because you sound tired. And sad. And I know what that feels like.
Ai fine.
Liar. A soft laugh, surprising, genuine. You're the only person who calls me that. Maybe more people should. Maybe. They sat in silence, connected by phone but separated by the vast gulf between their worlds. Danny asks about you sometimes, Olivia admitted. Wants to know if you like dinosaurs yet. Tell him I've been researching. Velociraptors are apparently quite impressive. He'll be thrilled to hear that. Another silence. Then Dante said, I should let you go.
Yeah.
I should. I should get dinner started. Olivia? Yes. If you ever need anything at all, you use that phone. Don't hesitate. I know. Good. The line went dead. Olivia sat holding the phone for a long moment, her heart doing complicated things she didn't want to examine too closely. She'd called to thank him, to set boundaries, to make it clear that his constant help, while appreciated, was also overwhelming. But instead, she'd asked if he was okay. And he'd researched dinosaurs for her son. Nothing about this situation made sense. Nothing about Dante Caruso fit into the neat categories Olivia had built her life around: good people and bad people, right choices and wrong ones. He was a criminal who'd shown her more kindness than most law-abiding citizens ever had. He was dangerous and protective, ruthless and generous, violent and gentle. He was impossible to categorize, impossible to forget. And Olivia was starting to realize that maybe she didn't want to. 2 months after the wedding, Olivia saw Dante again. It wasn't planned. She was leaving the grocery store with Danny, bags balanced in both arms, when she spotted him across the parking lot. He was getting out of a sedan, no convoy this time, just him and Marco, wearing a dark suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He saw her at the same moment. For a few seconds, they just stared at each other across rows of parked cars. Then Danny noticed. Mom, it's the dinosaur guy. Before Olivia could stop him, Danny was running across the parking lot, dodging shopping carts and startled pedestrians. Her heart seized with terror, but Marco was already moving, positioning himself to ensure no cars came near the boy. Danny skidded to a stop in front of Dante, breathless and grinning. Did you learn about dinosaurs yet? Dante crouched down to Danny's eye level, a gesture so natural it surprised Olivia. I did. Velociraptors were actually smaller than most people think. Only about the size of a turkey. I know. Everyone gets that wrong because of the movies. Danny was practically vibrating with excitement. But they were still super smart. Pack hunters. They could probably take down prey way bigger than them if they worked together. Intelligent and strategic. Sounds like a good survival strategy. Olivia caught up, slightly out of breath. Danny, you can't just run off like that. You scared me.
Sorry, Mom.
But look, it's Mr. Caruso. Dante stood, his eyes meeting Olivia's. Mrs. Reed, you're looking well. It's just Olivia. And thank you. She glanced at Danny, then back to Dante. For everything. No thanks necessary. An awkward silence stretched between them. Marco tactfully studied his phone. Danny looked back and forth between the adults, picking up on the tension. Are you going to the store too? Danny asked Dante. We just got ice cream. Mom let me pick 2 flavors. That's generous of her. She's been letting me do lots of stuff lately. I think she's happy. Dante's expression softened. Good. She deserves to be happy. Do you want to come to dinner? The words tumbled out of Danny before Olivia could process them. Mom makes really good spaghetti. It's my favorite. Danny. Olivia started mortified. That's very kind of you, Dante said gently, but I'm sure your mother has plans. We don't have plans, Danny interrupted. It's just us. It's always just us. But you could come. You like spaghetti, right? Everyone likes spaghetti. Olivia wanted the parking lot to open up and swallow her. Danny, Mr. Caruso is a very busy man. He doesn't have time to. Actually, Dante said quietly, his eyes still on Olivia. I don't have plans tonight either. The world seemed to tilt slightly. You don't have to, Olivia said quickly. He's 7. He doesn't understand that you can't just invite people to. I'd like to. If you'll have me. The sincerity in his voice caught her completely off guard. This was Dante Caruso, crime boss, who probably had dinner meetings with politicians and business associates, who probably ate at restaurants where the plates cost more than her groceries. And he wanted to come eat spaghetti in her tiny apartment. Okay, she heard herself say. 6 o'clock. I'll be there. At 5:45, Olivia was in full panic mode. She'd rushed home, cleaned the apartment twice, changed her clothes 3 times, and was now stirring sauce like her life depended on it. Danny had set the table, which meant the forks were on the wrong side and the napkins were folded into uneven triangles, but at least he'd tried. Mom, why are you freaking out? Danny asked from the living room, where he was organizing his dinosaur collection for display. I'm not freaking out. You've checked your hair in the microwave door like 5 times. That's absurd. I'm just making sure dinner is perfect. It's just spaghetti. It's not just spaghetti, Olivia muttered, then caught herself. What was she doing? Why did she care so much? The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. Dante stood in the hallway holding a bottle of wine and a wrapped package. He'd changed, no suit this time, just dark jeans and a button-down shirt. He looked normal. Almost. I wasn't sure what to bring, he said. The wine is for you. The other, he handed her the package, is for Danny. You didn't have to bring anything. I was raised better than to show up empty-handed. Danny appeared, dragging Dante inside before Olivia could say anything else. Come see my dinosaurs. I organized them by time period. While Danny gave Dante an enthusiastic tour of his collection, Olivia opened the package. Inside was an expensive-looking book about paleontology, filled with detailed illustrations and photographs. The kind of book she could never have afforded. Her eyes stung with unexpected tears. Dinner was strange and wonderful and completely surreal. Danny talked nonstop about school, his friends, the project he was doing on the solar system. Dante listened with genuine interest, asking questions that made Danny light up even more. Olivia watched them interact, this crime boss and her 7-year-old son, discussing whether Mars could ever be terraformed and if dinosaurs could have survived an ice age. Your mother is a very good cook, Dante told Danny, taking another helping of spaghetti. She makes it every Wednesday. It's tradition. Traditions are important. After dinner, Danny insisted on showing Dante his room, pointing out all the repairs and improvements. Mr. Caruso fixed everything, he explained proudly, not knowing he was telling Dante about his own work. Mom says a nice man helped us. Your mother is right, though I'm sure she did most of the hard work herself. When Danny finally went to brush his teeth and get ready for bed, Olivia and Dante stood in the living room, the evening winding down into awkward silence. Thank you for coming, Olivia said softly. You made his night. He's a good kid. Smart.
Kind.
You're raising him well. I'm trying, she hesitated. This was nice. Normal. I didn't think normal was possible anymore. Maybe normal is overrated. Maybe what matters is finding moments that feel right, even if they don't fit the old definition. Olivia looked at him, really looked at him, without the suits and the guards and the dangerous circumstances. Just a man standing in her living room who'd shown her son kindness, who'd researched dinosaurs because a child asked him to. I don't know what this is, she admitted. This thing between us. This connection. Neither do I. But it's there. Yes. Danny called from his room.
Mom.
Come tuck me in. I should. Olivia gestured toward the hallway. Of course. I should go anyway. But neither of them moved. Dante, Olivia said quietly, using his first name for the first time. Thank you. Not just for tonight. For everything. You're welcome, Olivia. The way he said her name, soft, careful, like something precious, made her chest tight. He left a few minutes later, and Olivia tucked Danny into bed, listening to him chatter about how cool Mr. Caruso was and how he knew so much about dinosaurs. Can he come to dinner again? Danny asked sleepily. Maybe, Olivia said. We'll see. I like him, Mom. He makes you smile. After Danny fell asleep, Olivia sat on her couch with a glass of the wine Dante had brought, expensive, smooth, probably from some vineyard she'd never heard of. She thought about the evening, about how easy it had been, how right it had felt. And she realized with startling clarity, she was falling for a man she'd sworn to forget. A dangerous man. A criminal. Someone from a world she wanted nothing to do with. But also the man who'd saved her life, protected her son, and researched dinosaurs because a 7-year-old asked him to. Life, Olivia decided, was impossibly complicated. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. 6 months after the wedding, Olivia's life had found a new rhythm. She'd been promoted at work, night shift supervisor to operations coordinator, with better hours and better pay. Danny was thriving in school, making friends, joining the robotics club. Her mother visited more often now that she wasn't drowning in mortgage payments. The surveillance had become less obvious. No more black sedans parked across the street. No more Sophia appearing at the park. Either Dante had pulled back his protection, or his people had gotten better at staying invisible. Olivia suspected the latter. She and Dante had settled into something neither of them could quite name. Not dating, they'd never been on an actual date. Not friends exactly, though friendship was part of it. He came to dinner once a month, always bringing something thoughtful for Danny, always staying just long enough to feel like part of something normal before disappearing back into his world. They didn't talk about his business, didn't acknowledge the darkness that surrounded his life. In her apartment, over spaghetti and Danny's endless enthusiasm, they existed in a bubble where he was just Dante and she was just Olivia, and everything else fell away. It was enough.
For now.
One Saturday morning, Olivia decided to move apartments. Not far, just to a better building 3 blocks away, with an elevator and a washer-dryer in unit. She could afford it now, thanks to Dante's money and her promotion. A fresh start in a place that didn't carry memories of broken doors and masked men. Danny was at a friend's birthday party, so Olivia spent the morning packing boxes in peaceful silence. She was cleaning out the hall closet when she found something she'd forgotten about. The box from the safe house. The one Marco had packed with their belongings before they left. Inside were Danny's clothes from that time, some of his toys, and at the bottom, carefully wrapped in tissue paper, was Rusty the robot. Olivia lifted it out, examining it in the morning light. She'd looked at it dozens of times since coming home, marveling at how perfectly it had been repaired. But now, turning it over in her hands, she noticed something she'd missed before. A small seam along the robot's back panel, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it. Her fingers found the catch, and the panel opened. Inside the hollow body of the robot was a folded piece of paper. Olivia's hands trembled as she unfolded it. The same elegant handwriting from the first note, but this message was longer. Olivia, by the time you read this, enough time will have passed that you'll have decided whether to keep me in your life or let me fade into memory. Whatever you've chosen, I respect it. I want you to know that your safety, and Danny's, is not contingent on your decision. The protection I've provided isn't a bargaining chip or a way to keep you connected to me. It's a promise I made, and promises matter. You saved my life once, without knowing who I was or what I'd become. You showed me that goodness still exists in the world, that not everyone wants something in return for their kindness. That simple act changed something in me I didn't know could still change. I can never give you back the peace you had before I said your name. I can never undo the fear you felt, the danger I brought into your life. But I can ensure that from this day forward, you and your son will never be harmed because of me. My people will watch over you, not obviously, not intrusively, but constantly. You won't see them. You won't know they're there. But if anyone ever threatens you, if anyone ever tries to use you against me or hurt you for any reason, they will intervene. This protection has no expiration date. It's not dependent on our friendship or any connection between us. It's simply what you're owed for the life you gave back to me. Live your life, Olivia. Raise your son. Be happy. That's all I want for you. And if you ever need me for anything, any reason, anytime, you know how to reach me. With respect and gratitude, Dante. P.S. The robot repair cost $300. I mention this only because I suspect you'll worry I spent some absurd amount. It was a local craftsman who specializes in vintage toys. He did excellent work. Olivia read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. The protection wasn't because she'd become special to him. It wasn't leverage or control or some twisted mafia obligation. It was a gift. Pure and simple. The same kind of gift she'd given him 5 years ago in that parking lot. Help without conditions, kindness without expectation. She carefully refolded the letter and placed it back inside Rusty, closing the panel. Some secrets were worth keeping, even from yourself, until the moment you needed to remember them. That evening, after Danny came home full of stories about the birthday party, after dinner and homework and the familiar bedtime routine, Olivia sat on her couch and looked around her apartment. This place that had been violated and then restored. This life that had been threatened and then protected. This normal existence that wasn't really normal anymore, but was somehow better than what she'd had before. She thought about the letter, about promises kept and debts repaid, and the strange honor of dangerous men. She thought about Dante, somewhere in the city, running his empire of shadows while quietly ensuring that one single mother and her son lived in the light. And she realized that some debts could never be fully repaid because they weren't really debts at all. They were connections, threads that tied people together across impossible divides. She didn't know what the future held. Didn't know if Dante would always be part of her life, or if eventually he'd fade into memory like he'd written. But she knew that somewhere in the darkness, someone was watching. Someone who'd once been bleeding in a parking lot. Someone who'd learned that goodness deserved protection, not exploitation. And that knowledge, that quiet, invisible safety, was its own kind of love. 2 years later, Danny came running into their new apartment, the one with the elevator and the washer-dryer, waving a report card.
Mom.
I got an A in science. Mr. Caruso is going to be so proud. Olivia smiled, stirring the spaghetti that was becoming a Wednesday tradition with a guest who showed up once a month, like clockwork. He'll be here at 6. You can tell him yourself. Danny ran to his room to get ready, and Olivia caught her reflection in the kitchen window. She looked different than she had 2 years ago.
Happier.
More settled. The fear had faded, replaced by something she'd never expected to feel again. Security. Belonging. Home. The doorbell rang precisely at 6 o'clock. Olivia opened the door to find Dante standing in the hallway, holding wine for her and a wrapped book for Danny, a biography of a famous paleontologist this time. You're very punctual, she said, stepping aside to let him in. I respect people's time. Even when you're running the criminal underworld. Especially then. Danny appeared, launching into an excited explanation of his science project. Dante listened with the same genuine interest he always showed, asking questions, offering suggestions, being present in a way that mattered. And Olivia watched them. This impossible family she'd somehow built from kindness and danger, and a parking lot 5 years ago. Not a debt. Not an obligation. Just two people who'd saved each other, in different ways, at different times. And were still saving each other, every day. The protection remained invisible. The threats never came. Life went on. But Rusty the robot sat on Danny's shelf, keeping it secret. And Olivia slept soundly, knowing that somewhere in the shadows, promises were being kept.